We're back for you on Live Now from Fox. Always great to be with you as we continue to bring you some of the day's biggest top stories and headlines, all right here on Live Now from Fox. Next up, a really big story that came out today with the Justice Department releasing the full transcripts and audio recordings from its two-day interview with Ghislaine Maxwell in Tallahassee. Two big takeaways. Maxwell denied Jeffrey Epstein had a client list and reiterated that she does not think he killed himself. She also mentioned President Trump and former President Clinton. And for more on what was said during the prison interview and if anything else will come from it, let's now bring in our special guest here on Live Now from Fox, Neama Rahmani, legal analyst, former federal prosecutor. Always great to have you on. And yeah, this is a case, of course, that gets worldwide attention. And how important is Maxwell to this case in this Epstein files?
Mike, Ghislaine Maxwell is very important. She was Jeff Epstein's ex-girlfriend, right-hand woman. She knows everything where the bodies are buried. Now, she's a convicted sex trafficker and a liar, so I don't necessarily believe her, but I think this was an important first step for the government fulfilling its promises to the American people and making at least parts of those Epstein files public and really ensuring the transparency that they've been talking about for months. Now, she did say that Donald Trump, or current president, wasn't implicated, former President Bill Clinton. That may well be true, but I'm much more inclined to believe the congressional testimony of former Attorney General Bill Barr, who said somewhat similar things. And he was obviously Attorney General during Trump's first term and when Jeffrey Epstein died, whether he was murdered or took his own life. But again, very important first step. But again, I don't know how credible Ghislaine Maxwell is.
Yeah, and let's also talk about Deputy Attorney Todd Blanche. When he was interviewing her, they gave her partial immunity. Tell us a little bit more about that tactic.
So, Mike, what that is, it's called Queen for a Day. Essentially, when you meet with Department of Justice officials, and it's pretty rare to be meeting with the number 2 person in the DOJ, but that's how big of a case this is. You sign an agreement that essentially says anything you say during that meeting, what we call a proffer, can't be used against you. It's not immunity. It's not even cooperation. It basically just says the use or derivative immunity from what you say can't be used against you. But if prosecutors get that information from some other source, she can absolutely be prosecuted. Now, is it realistic for her to be charged again when she's already serving a 20-year term? Probably not, but that's how those deals are typically structured.
And with these transcripts, there was a lot of back and forth between the Trump administration and DOJ when it was once again in the news of these Epstein files and a supposed client list that doesn't exist really. But what was the importance really of releasing it? Let's talk about it on a Friday.
Well, I mean, obviously you want to bury bad news on a Friday. That's typically what government officials do, or anyone really, even the private sector. But this was probably good news for the president. So I don't necessarily think that it was pushed out on a Friday for that reason. I think likely the DOJ is going to produce some of these documents to the Congressional Oversight Committee. So to get out ahead of that, if you're the Trump administration, you want it to come from you to the American people, not from the House to the American people. So again, I think this is a good first step for transparency. Ghislaine Maxwell's 2-day interview where she said she saw nothing, knows nothing, not believable in my opinion. Again, I'm not saying that Trump or Clinton did anything improper, but I think if you're looking for some credibility, she would have identified some of the other perpetrators, and she didn't do so.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were thinking, okay, there's going to be big names in this, and they're going to get to the bottom of it. But it really, so far, has not gone that way. Now, what is in the future for her case as well? Could there be any more interviews from the DOJ?
There could be. And look, this is why Ghislaine Maxwell did it. She's sucking up to President Trump to try to get a presidential pardon. I don't know if he's going to stick his neck out and do that, especially with how toxic the Jeffrey Epstein case is right now. But that's her and her lawyers play here. And it's not surprising that shortly after this interview, she was moved to a minimum security camp. It could have been the biggest coincidence in the world, and the Bureau of Prisons just reshuffling the deck. But the timing is certainly somewhat suspicious. The other sort of avenue she has is, of course, that Supreme Court appeal that's pending. The justices are going to consider her case to even accept it during their conference in late September. And this is the argument that she was covered by the original Jeffrey Epstein non-prosecution agreement. I think that's a bit of a legal stretch, and I think that appeal will likely be rejected. The court won't even consider it, in which case Ghislaine Maxwell will have to ask herself, do I still push this presidential pardon issue, or am I going to start telling the truth and actually start naming names and telling the Justice Department what really happened here?
Yeah, so true. Neama Rahmani, thanks so much for joining us on Live Now from Fox. Always great to have you on, and have a great weekend.
Of course, Mike. Great talking to you. Have a great weekend.